The year is 1994. The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union has collapsed, and Russia, humbled, restructured, and desperate to prove to the world that it is still a superpower worth fearing, turns its eyes toward a small, restless republic buried deep in the Caucasus Mountains called Chechnya, a land of proud, fierce people who have resisted foreign rule for centuries, who have bled for their freedom across generations, and who are now, once again, refusing to bow, forcing Russian President Boris Yeltsin, under enormous political pressure and burning with the need to project strength, to order his military to move in and crush the rebellion swiftly, decisively, and without mercy, with senior generals standing before maps and confidently declaring that this will be over in days, maybe weeks, certainly not months, that a small, poorly armed separatist force cannot possibly stand against a full industrial and military might of Russian Federation. But they were wrong, catastrophically, humiliatingly, and fatally wrong. Because on the night of December 31st, 1994, as families across Russia gathered around warm tables, filled their glasses with champagne, laughed, and counted down the final seconds to a brand new year, thousands of Russian soldiers were already moving to the cold darkness, tank columns and armored vehicles rumbling toward Grozny, the Chechen capital, in a bold, theatrical, three-pronged mechanized assault, designed to drive straight into the heart of the city, seize the presidential palace, shatter the enemy's will, and end the war before it could truly begin, with some soldiers reportedly so confident they believed they would be home and celebrating before the New Year festivities were even over. And that confidence, that breathtaking arrogance, that complete failure to understand the enemy waiting for them inside those dark streets, would cost them everything, because the Chechen fighters were not fleeing. They were not hiding in the mountains. They were inside Grozny, calm and prepared, having spent weeks studying Russian military doctrine, identifying every route the columns would take, positioning their fighters in basements, on rooftops, and behind the shattered windows of high-rise apartment buildings that line the streets like concrete canyons, pre-marking kill zones at specific intersections where the heavy Russian vehicles would be forced to slow down, compress together, and lose the ability to maneuver, turning the city itself into a weapon. And when the Russian columns finally rolled into those dark, silent streets and the trap was sprung, the Chechens struck the lead vehicles first, then the rear, sealing the columns inside corridors of fire from which there was no escape. Tank crews burned alive inside their own armor as rocket-propelled grenades tore through metal that was never designed for this kind of close-quarters urban slaughter. Dismounted infantry cut down the moment they stepped onto the frozen streets, officers screaming into radios that no one could answer, units losing cohesion, losing direction, losing men by the minute, until the elite Russian Maikop Brigade, one of the most feared and best-equipped fighting units in the entire Russian military, was virtually annihilated in a single night, reduced from a proud war machine to scattered burning wreckage on the frozen streets of a city it had come to conquer. Yet Russia, wounded and enraged, did not retreat, did not reconsider, did not negotiate, because an angry superpower with unlimited artillery and no regard for what stands in its way is one of the most destructive forces this world has ever witnessed. And what followed was not a military campaign, but an act of erasure, as Russian forces rained bombs and shells on Grozny from the air and from the ground, collapsing apartment buildings, flattening entire neighborhoods, turning streets into graveyards of concrete and ash, until the United Nations looked at what remained and called Grozny the most destroyed city on the face of the earth, a place that had once been home to nearly 400,000 living, breathing people reduced to dust and silence. The war dragged on until 1996, when the Chechens, impossibly, defiantly, against every calculation of power and logic, fought Russia to a humiliating ceasefire and won de facto independence. A result so shocking it sent tremors through the Russian military establishment and planted seeds of anger and humiliation that would reshape Russian politics for decades to come. But what history remembers, what cannot be forgotten, is that first night, New Year's Eve 1994, when the arrogance of superpower marched blindly into the dark and met the cold, calculated wisdom of a people who had nothing left to lose, when a small force armed with nothing more than rocket launchers, handheld radios, and an unbreakable held off and destroyed a massive mechanized army street by street, floor by floor, and basement by basement, proving to the entire watching world that size is not strength, that firepower is not victory, and that the most dangerous soldier on any battlefield is the one fighting for his home. The tanks burned, The brigade fell, the superpower bled. And for one devastating, unforgettable night, David did not just face Goliath. David destroyed him. This is a Battle of Grozny. This is a New Year's Eve trap. This is war. Its glory and its grief.